Hi, I'm Mr. Mullaney. This lesson is a recap of our lesson about Jamestown. These slides that we're going to go through were prepared by my student teacher, Mr. Colin Boyle. Thank you, Mr. Boyle. And on we go. So let's talk about the do now questions. First of all, the advantages that helped Spain conquer the Aztecs, the fact that other Native American tribes disliked the Aztecs' harsh treatment of them, which included conquering their lands, ritual sacrifice, things like that. The Aztecs thought the Spanish were descended from gods, so that helped them, and also diseases helped them. What's significant about Magellan, his crew, not him, but his crew, are the first crew to circumnavigate the earth on a ship. And Mr. Boyle also asked about what the class knew about Pocahontas. That comes in later in the lesson. So we talk about England in the New World. You have Queen Elizabeth. She's a Protestant, and she encouraged her English pirates to attack Spanish Catholics and to attack those ships that were extracting riches such as gold from the New World. You had famous sea dogs such as Sir Francis Drake. They raid Spanish ports, and they do this all over the world. All right, English exploration. We talked about a few before the 1600s. All of these, the big thing about them, including Henry Hudson, for whom the Hudson River is named, the big thing to know about them is that they were looking unsuccessfully, because it doesn't exist, for a northwest passage to Asia. So Mr. Boyle then played a clip from Pocahontas, which actually showed a lot of the reasons why England was going into the New World and colonizing. They were looking for riches like the Spanish had found and exploited. They were looking for that Northwest Passage. They wanted a new market, and some thought it would help England with its overcrowding. So they start to attempt to colonize. You have Roanoke, started by Sir Walter Raleigh. He leaves to return to England. He comes back, and it's gone. It's vanished. It's the lost colony. You have joint stock companies. They start with a charter issued by the king. The joint stock company then starts a colony in the New World. So, for instance, in 1606, King James chartered the Virginia Company. Now, the charters delineate the boundaries of these colonies, and they don't always agree, and they don't always make sense, and this is going to cause the colonies themselves to have some conflict later. And you get Jamestown. Jamestown is so significant because it's the first successful, it's eventually successful, but is the first successful English settlement after lots of hardships. All right. The location was terrible. They had mosquitoes and malaria. They had unrealistic grass is always greener expectations. Many did not want to do the hard work that it would take to start a settlement. They had conflict with the natives. They had starvation. They had poor leadership. Mr. Boyle presented two quotes about Jamestown. One, this first one in London, talking about how great it is, how wonderful it is. Oh, there's all this gold and copper and diamonds for people to just take. And then there's one that's more realistic about the starving time in Jamestown. So it contrasts what people thought it would be like in England with what it actually was like. However, it hangs on. Captain John Smith takes the helm. He says, if you don't work, you won't eat. Lord Delaware, that might sound familiar, he is able to bring new supplies and settlers and keep the colony intact. And the Virginia colony really takes off with one cash crop, tobacco, developed by John Rolfe. All right. This leads to a plantation economy where you need lots of cheap labor. You don't pay slaves, however, you pay to house them. Obviously, the conditions were always terrible, but the cost of that versus a salary are very much cheaper, and so that was the way it worked. There were also indentured servants, most of whom never saw their freedom. And so Virginia struggles. It is made into a royal colony. It has the first form of representative government in North America, the House of Burgesses. The English pattern of conquest, like the Spanish, was harsh. Spanish was influenced by the Reconquistas. Theirs was influenced by conquering Ireland. All right, it was all or nothing, and it led to many battles with natives. And then you get Bacon's Rebellion, a situation where the settlers keep going west. leads to confrontation with Native Americans. Governor Berkeley does not want to help these settlers going way out west. And so Nathaniel Bacon says, all right, then we'll raise our own army to fight the Native Americans. Governor Berkeley does not like this. He does not want armies independent of his being raised. And so they go out to stop him. Bacon attacks Jamestown in response and destroys it, or burns it. But Bacon gets sick and died, and then without his leadership, the rebellion fell apart. So that was our recap. Thank you, Mr. Boyle, for preparing these slides about Jamestown, beginnings of English colonization.